Hey, Milwaukee Mafia Patreon members. Welcome back to another episode. I'm Eric Walterkins.
I'm Gavin Schmitt.
And Gavin, what's the question of the day for you?
When's it going to stop snowing?
Nobody knows the answer to that question.
No, what do you got for us?
So I've got a question from Jane, and Jane asks, what is the biggest difference between being an author giving book talks and being an author recording podcasts?
Huh. Okay. It's an interesting question. The audience is different is really the answer, right?
I mean, that's going to be the most obvious difference, but is there differences that you take when prepping for an episode, I guess, or a speech?
Definitely, yeah. So when I give a talk, normally, I almost never make notes. Almost never. I'll show up, I spend the first 5 minutes kind of explaining who I am, because not everybody that goes knows. They might be at a library and they're a library regular. They might have no clue who I am. So I'll explain that. And then, I just kind of do stories. And the bulk of it is usually the question and answer session because I want to get to what people want to know. And there's always questions that come up. There's some that are like, I could make a checklist and I know they're going to come up. They're always going to come up. But then there's always the curveballs too. So it's kind of fun because you never know exactly what that curveball is going to be. So when I show up, these talks are usually about an hour. And I don't know going into it what's going to happen by the end of it. But it's a lot more bouncing off of people with the questions and personalities and things like that. Podcast is very different because if anybody's hearing of this right now, then that's the audience. Mm-hmm. But I can't see them. If they have feedback, unless they submit an email, I don't hear the feedback. And we do try to have some notes. I like to think the notes are getting a little better, but the topic is very firm going into it each time. So other than like the questions that you ask for like clarification, it's much more rigid. I guess there's that. How do you think they mean the question exactly?
Well, I guess one of the questions I would ask you is, based on what you've said, so do you generally, if you go in, you must kind of set it with some story, but are you kind of telling just a very vague short story in a live talk and then opening it up to questions? Whereas what you're producing on the podcast is a much deeper dive into that subject, would you say?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The podcast is super thorough. Anything I do in person is not nearly as thorough because I have to do it completely from memory. So there's a lot of stories I can tell pretty good, but I'm not going to remember all the names. I'm not going to remember all the dates, addresses. I can kind of give you the general, and I'm always going to forget something, and that's just how it is. But yeah, it's definitely more broad overview. And like I said, it's basically I try to do Q&A. If nobody does Q&A, if nobody like has a question, then I have certain stories that I know people like to hear or that I like to tell. And so I'll do that out. I'll throw that out there just to kind of get things going. If nobody has a question, like if I'm there for a whole hour and nobody has a question, which is extremely rare. But
I was going to say.
But if it were to happen, I would be in some trouble. I could do it. I have enough stories to fill an hour, obviously, since we've been doing this for a year now. It's much better when I can like bounce off of people. It makes being in person better because right now, we're talking. Mm-hmm. There's an audience, but we don't know the audience. Yes. So it's just us talking. In person, if you're in front of 50 people, 100 people, whatever it is, they just sit there and they have no reaction at all. That's the worst. Right now, if someone's at home listening and they're just like bored out of their mind, I'm sorry. I apologize for that, but I don't see it. So I don't have that kind of reaction where I need to engage as much with the audience.
Have you ever had a session where, I think you kind of said no, but have you ever had a session where the audience is just stone cold, like nothing? Like you tell a story and there's just no reaction whatsoever?
Not really. The only time that happens is if for some reason it's a bad day or the marketing is off or something and there's not a good turnout. Usually 50 is like the low end for me. I do 100 or more people regularly. If only like 10 people show up, that's not good for me. It's not good for the venue either because, they're trying to get people in. But it's not good for me because I don't work as well with the smaller group because I'm relying on that bouncing. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, when I do like presentations or anything like that, I much prefer, like, that's my opening line. Like, we need to be interactive here because I'm not going to sit here and talk for this entire session, you know?
Yeah, I don't give lectures. I don't believe in doing that.
Yeah. And it's just much better. So just out of curiosity, do you like the podcast format better? Do you like the book talk format better? Do you like certain aspects of each better?
Okay.
I mean,
I like them both. I do like the podcast better, but I like them both. Being in person is nice because it's good to get that feedback from people directly. Because here, you know, we might get hundreds of downloads, but then nobody emails us. But there, you know, most people will at least say, you know, you did a good job or thank you or something. So I at least know that somebody got something out of it.
Yeah.
So that's nice. It's a good reassuring feeling to know that people are showing up and are interested. So there's that. But if I had to pick one or the other, I actually prefer this better because I like the idea of this just being an ongoing story. And I have right now, I've actually been outlining, which I don't ever do, but I've been outlining like the stories I want to do going forward. And we're going to be in the 1950s for like the next couple of months. So hopefully people want to hear the 1950s. But I like that because some of the 1950s stories come up. Some of them just never come up. It's nice to actually get that out there and get every piece in place before I move or we move into the 60s, 70s, 80s.
Interesting question for you. Kind of completely off base of the question.
Sure.
But I think it's still a good question to ask. I'm sure that there are other authors out there that are doing podcasts on their subject matter.
Sure.
But I don't think it's super common. And I'm curious if you think, from your experience of doing it thus far, would you say like, man, this is something every author should do? Or do you think, well, I think my niche works right for it?
That's actually a really good question. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think there's a lot of I think there are a lot of authors who do podcasts. But they either are like a guest on random podcasts,
right,
which I also do, but there's that, or it's like a podcast mini-series. It's like 6 episodes and we're done. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know that too many people do like long-running ones. And it probably does work a little better for what we are doing because we can do this, you know, not infinitely, but we can go, it's going to be a few years before we get to the end. So it's good for that. It's too early for me to say like with the numbers, but speaking as an author, I would say it probably does help the book sales. Mm-hmm. Maybe even more than doing events helps the book sales.
Oh, really?
I don't, like I said, the numbers are too early. I don't know that. But it's like each time we tell a story, if somebody is interested, they can always go, and not every story is in the books, but they can go out and they can get like the more detailed version of it. Whereas like when I do a presentation, like that's it. Yeah. Whatever book I'm not selling to a person in the room, it's done. Yeah. This is out there indefinitely.
Exactly.
So yeah. I feel like it's, from a marketing point of view, it's a really good method. Like I said, it's too early. I don't know if the numbers reflect that, but I feel like the opportunity is definitely there.
Yeah, and I would say that the good thing about being in a live event is that you have the books right there for people to make that spontaneous purchase, whereas you can't really replicate that through a podcast. But then at the same time, I would feel like this podcast...
Unless we've got like a buy link on here. Maybe we do. I don't know.
I don't know. We'd have to ask the web developer.
We'd have to ask the web developer. But maybe right below this, there's a click and buy now. I don't know.
But I also think like the podcast probably does you'd have to do quite a few events to reach the amount of people in a month that this podcast reaches in a month.
Right. I agree with that. Yes.
As long as the people that are downloading it are actually listening to it.
Right.
So we don't really know. But...
Right. That's true. And your keywords are different.
Yeah.
When I do an event, it's usually just my name and Milwaukee Mafia, which is great. I mean, it works. People show up. But these have different titles each week. And maybe somebody doesn't care about Milwaukee Mafia, but there's a certain name that they care about.
But they really like cheese companies and Fond du Lac.
Yeah, they like cheese companies. So they might be like, oh, I had no idea that there was a Milwaukee Mafia podcast or book or anything else, and I didn't care. But look at this. Here's something that I do care about. Then they come in that I don't know, but I do think there's more opportunity.
Yeah.
So I don't know if anybody listens to this and they're an author. I mean, it's definitely worth a shot.
Yeah. I personally, and this is just my personal belief, but I think that the serialized version of this, I feel like it works better than a book. Yes. Because there's no way they would ever allow you to write a book I mean, you could probably write, 6 or 7 consecutive Mafia books and cover the whole span, tell all the stories. But this is very unique in a way that you can get small bites and go start from the beginning.
I do like the format better. I do like the format. I mean, not that I'm going to stop writing books, but I could stop writing books and actually feel pretty good about it. Just knowing that I'm going to hit each story I want to tell sooner or later. And some of these stories are never going to be in a book because they just don't fit into the story arc or whatever. But
Cool. Do you got anything else with this question?
No, I don't know.
I feel like we're cutting it short, but I guess we can do that, right?
We can do that, but
It's
I don't know
Patreon.
what else there is. That's really the difference, is either talking to an audience or talking into the void. So, and there's, there are some differences. There's pluses and minuses, and I guess that's probably about it.
All right, then I think we will wrap this episode up.
All right.
We will be back in 1 week with a regular Milwaukee Mafia podcast, and then we will be back in 2 weeks with another Patreon. Thanks, everybody, for supporting us, and we'll see you in a week.
All right. Thank you.
Hey there, Milwaukee Mafia listeners. Thanks for tuning into the bonus episode from our Patreon archive. If you want to hear the latest and greatest content, head over to patreon.com/Milwaukee Mafia to join the Patreon today. Catch you on the other side.